Elizabeth stood in the dimly lit hallway of her grand home, her hands trembling but her eyes burning with fire. The air felt heavy, thick with lies and unspoken betrayals. She could hear footsteps echoing in the distance, familiar steps, yet they no longer brought comfort. They belonged to her own son, David, and to the man she had once trusted as a family advisor, Pierce. Both had plotted in secret, weaving lies that threatened to tear her life apart. The letter she held in her hands was proof that the family she had nurtured, the legacy she had built, was under attack. Her heart raced, a mix of fear and fierce determination. She remembered the promises she had made to her late husband, to herself, to Sophia. She would not allow deception to define her life. Elizabeth's mind raced with memories, family dinners that hid whispered schemes, smiles that concealed betrayal, nights spent wondering why the people she loved most could turn so cold. And yet, amidst the storm of emotions, one thought anchored her. She had survived before, and she would survive again. She took a slow, deep breath, steadying herself. "This is not the end," she whispered. "It is only the beginning." Her eyes darted to the photo of Sophia, her innocent daughter sleeping peacefully upstairs, unaware of the storm below. Elizabeth's heart clenched. Protecting her child was no longer just a duty. It was a mission. She would reclaim what was hers, not with vengeance alone, but with strategy, courage, and unshakable resolve. The hallway seemed darker than ever, shadows stretching like fingers trying to trap her. But Elizabeth refused to be intimidated. She had faced life's toughest battles already, and this betrayal, was merely another challenge. Her hands tightened around the letter. Every lie exposed hereafter would be a step toward freedom. Every deception uncovered would be a triumph over fear. She moved toward the staircase, her mind already mapping out her next steps. The mansion that once felt like a sanctuary now carried echoes of treachery, yet it was hers to reclaim. Elizabeth's pulse quickened, a surge of energy coursing through her veins. She was ready. Even as doubt whispered in the corners of her mind, Elizabeth's determination roared louder. She would face her son, confront Pierce, and uncover every hidden secret. The stakes were high. Relationships, family legacy, even her daughter's future hung in the balance. And yet, in that moment, Elizabeth realized something vital. She was not powerless. She had strength, intelligence, and resilience. And she would use all of it. This was the day her story would change. The day the mother who had been wronged would rise. And in the quiet of that dimly lit hallway, amidst shadows of deceit, Elizabeth took her first decisive step toward reclaiming her life. The morning sunlight spilled over the sprawling estate, glinting off the polished marble floors and crystal chandeliers. Birds chirped in the gardens outside, a stark contrast to the storm brewing inside Elizabeth's mind. She moved through the corridors with quiet precision, every step measured, every glance purposeful. Her life had been one of elegance and order, but beneath the surface, tension had been quietly accumulating. Elizabeth Parker was not just a mother. She was a woman of strength, intelligence, and deep compassion. Widowed at 38, she had devoted herself to raising her daughter, Sophia, and managing the family business left behind by her late husband, Richard. The company was thriving, but the very people closest to her were undermining her at every turn. Sophia, at 16, was bright, intuitive, and fiercely loyal to her mother. She had grown up in the shadow of a family legacy she barely understood, yet she felt every fracture and whisper of betrayal. Elizabeth often caught herself glancing at her daughter, wondering how she could shield her from the pain she had endured while also preparing her to face a harsh reality. Downstairs, the grand dining room stood empty, the table meticulously set as if expecting a family gathering that never came. Elizabeth recalled the last family dinner, a night filled with laughter that masked the hidden ambitions of David, her eldest son. David Parker was 27, charming and confident, yet manipulative and self-serving. He had always craved control, and as Elizabeth's health and energy waned during past trials, he quietly maneuvered to seize power. Pierce Hamilton, the family's financial advisor, was another figure of concern. Appearing loyal and trustworthy, Pierce had been a steady presence for years. But Elizabeth had begun noticing small inconsistencies: documents slightly altered, verbal promises unfulfilled, late-night phone calls that ended abruptly when she entered the room. She had trusted him once, perhaps too easily. That trust had been exploited. Elizabeth moved to the study, a room lined with books on leadership, strategy, and psychology. It had always been her sanctuary, a place to think, to plan, to reflect. She opened a journal, her pen hovering over the pages. Each word she wrote captured her observations, suspicions, and the faint outline of the plan she would soon enact. Sophia's voice called softly from upstairs. "Mom, are you okay?" Elizabeth smiled, though it didn't reach her eyes. "I'm fine, sweetheart. Just busy with work." She knew the lie was small, harmless in its intent, yet necessary. Sophia needed stability now more than ever. Outside, the estate was alive with activity. Employees went about their tasks, but there was a subtle tension in the air. Loyalty divided, conversations cautious, glances fleeting. Elizabeth was acutely aware that within this house, every smile could conceal ulterior motives, every handshake could mask betrayal. In her mind, Elizabeth began cataloging every detail: David's recent unauthorized business decisions, Pierce's unexplained withdrawals, and minor conflicts that hinted at a larger scheme. Each observation was a thread, weaving a complex web of deceit that threatened to entangle them all. Yet Elizabeth's strength lay not only in her awareness, but in her capacity to act decisively. She had faced adversity before: financial crises, personal loss, even public scrutiny, and emerged with grace and courage. This was no different, though the personal stakes were higher. As she prepared breakfast, Elizabeth reflected on the relationships that had sustained her. Her loyal assistant, Maria, who had stood by her through the darkest hours; her brother, Thomas, who offered counsel from afar; and a handful of trusted family friends who understood the complexity of their situation. Each connection was a lifeline, a reminder that even amidst betrayal, loyalty could still exist. Sophia joined her at the breakfast table, eyes wide with curiosity. "Mom, why does David seem different lately?" Elizabeth met her daughter's gaze, choosing her words carefully. "People can surprise us, Sophia, sometimes in ways we don't expect. But we must always stay true to ourselves and to what's right." Sophia nodded, absorbing the lesson with quiet determination. Elizabeth felt a swell of pride. Her daughter was beginning to understand resilience, not as a concept, but as a lived experience. Later, Elizabeth convened a private meeting with Maria in the study. "We need to review the company accounts thoroughly," she said, her voice steady but firm. "Every transaction, every contract. We cannot allow hidden agendas to succeed." Maria nodded, eyes reflecting concern and trust. "I'll get started immediately, Mrs. Parker. You're doing the right thing." Elizabeth leaned back, letting the weight of the moment settle. She knew the road ahead would be treacherous. Yet, she also knew something vital. Knowledge, preparation, and unwavering determination would be her greatest allies. The introduction of characters, settings, and underlying tensions was only the beginning. Elizabeth understood that confronting betrayal would not be easy. It would require courage, strategy, and an unyielding commitment to truth. But she was ready. For herself, for Sophia, and for the life she was determined to reclaim. As the morning sun rose higher, bathing the mansion in golden light, Elizabeth felt a quiet surge of resolve. This was the calm before the storm, a storm she would navigate with precision, strength, and an unwavering heart. The story of betrayal, struggle, and ultimate redemption was about to unfold. The first hints of deception were subtle, misplaced files, vague explanations, and unexplained phone calls. Elizabeth noticed them with the precision of a seasoned businesswoman and the intuition of a mother. Every detail mattered. Every tiny inconsistency gnawed at her, building a sense of unease that refused to be ignored. She could feel the tension in the air, a weight pressing down on her heart, though the outward world remained blissfully unaware of the storm brewing within her family. David Parker, her eldest son, had always been ambitious, but lately his confidence had turned into arrogance. He signed contracts without consultation, bypassed established protocols, and made promises he had no intention of keeping. At first, Elizabeth thought it was a temporary lapse, a misjudgment fueled by youthful overconfidence. But the casual way he dismissed her concerns told her a deeper truth. His charm, once warm and endearing, now seemed like a carefully constructed mask, a shield for hidden motives. Pierce Hamilton, the family's financial advisor, had been a trusted figure for years. His presence reassured Elizabeth, and she had often relied on his counsel in crucial business decisions. But subtle inconsistencies began to appear, minor withdrawals from accounts, slight alterations in documents, and numbers that never quite added up. At first, Elizabeth doubted her own perception, wondering if the stress of family turmoil was clouding her judgment. But late one night, as she meticulously cross-checked bank statements, emails, and contracts, the pattern emerged clearly. Someone she trusted had begun weaving a web of betrayal, one thread at a time. The first confrontation came in the quiet of the family office, a space that had once felt safe and familiar. The room smelled faintly of polished wood and leather, the dim light casting elongated shadows across the furniture. Elizabeth had always believed in addressing issues head-on, and tonight was no different. "David," she said, her voice steady yet firm, "I noticed several discrepancies in the contracts you approved last week. Can you explain?" David's smile was practiced, calculated. "Mom, it's all business. You worry too much. I'm just handling things efficiently." Elizabeth's eyes narrowed. Efficiency doesn't involve altering agreements or bypassing approval protocols. You're risking the company and this family's reputation. He leaned back casually, as if her words were a minor annoyance rather than a serious accusation. "You don't need to control everything, Mom. Maybe it's time I took the reins." The cold ambition in his tone cut deeper than any financial betrayal ever could. Elizabeth had anticipated tension, yes, but not this chilling audacity. Betrayal wasn't merely about stolen money or broken promises. It was about trust, family, and the bonds she had fought to maintain through every sacrifice and sleepless night. Meanwhile, Pierce worked silently behind the scenes. Elizabeth soon realized he had been subtly influencing David's decisions, guiding him toward choices that benefited Pierce more than the family business. The manipulation was insidious, almost invisible. A whisper here, a suggestion there, carefully crafted to make it seem like David's own idea. The realization left Elizabeth both shaken and determined. She had been outmaneuvered by someone she had trusted implicitly, and she knew it was time to reclaim control. Elizabeth decided that evidence was everything. She stayed up countless nights in the study, laptop open, cross-referencing contracts, financial statements, and emails. Every revelation added weight to her resolve. Every altered number, every misleading email, every secret meeting revealed a deeper layer of deceit. The betrayal had been systematic, precise, and cruel. But so would be her response. Emotionally, the toll was immense. Elizabeth felt anger, disappointment, and a deep ache that went beyond physical pain. She remembered the nights she had stayed awake to care for her children, the sacrifices she had made, and the loyalty she had shown to those now plotting against her. It was surreal, almost unbelievable, that those she loved most could orchestrate such a betrayal. The first public confrontation happened in the grand conference room. Sunlight streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows, cutting across the polished mahogany table in sharp lines. Employees felt the tension immediately. Whispers traveled through the room like electricity. The air itself seemed to crackle with anticipation. "David," Elizabeth began, her voice calm but firm. "Pierce, we need to discuss the irregularities in our business transactions." David feigned confusion, glancing at Pierce, whose neutral expression betrayed nothing. "I don't know what you mean, Mom," David said, with the faintest edge of defensiveness creeping into his tone. Elizabeth slid a thick stack of documents across the table. "I mean these: altered contracts, unauthorized withdrawals, secret meetings. I have proof of everything." Pierce's jaw tightened slightly. David's confident mask faltered for the briefest moment, revealing unease before they both regained their practiced smiles. "You're accusing us of betrayal?" David's voice was sharp, yet it carried the veneer of innocence. "I'm stating facts," Elizabeth replied evenly. "This isn't about anger. It's about accountability. I have given my trust, and it has been exploited. That ends now." Silence fell. The mansion itself seemed to pause, as if holding its breath, absorbing the tension of decades of unspoken secrets, and now witnessing their revelation. Employees exchanged uncertain glances, unsure whether to intervene or remain observers. As days passed, the betrayal deepened. David became defensive, attempting to manipulate Sophia subtly, whispering half-truths and planting seeds of doubt. Elizabeth watched her daughter closely, noticing the fleeting moments of hesitation and confusion that David sought to create. "Mom, I don't understand," Sophia said one evening, her voice tinged with worry, sitting beside Elizabeth on the balcony. "Why is David different? Why is he trying to make me doubt you?" Elizabeth held her daughter close. "Sophia, people sometimes act in ways that are hurtful. They make choices based on selfishness, fear, or ambition. But always remember this: you know the truth. Trust your heart and your instincts. They will never fail you." Betrayal seeped into personal spaces as well. Friends who had seemed loyal revealed ulterior motives, aligning themselves with David and Pierce. Invitations to social gatherings were tests, smiles were calculated. Casual conversations were laced with hidden agendas. Elizabeth realized her carefully constructed world was under siege from within. One tense evening, she confronted Pierce directly in the dimly lit study. "Pierce," she said, voice unwavering, "I know what you've been doing. You've manipulated David, altered records, and sought to control my family's business for your gain." Pierce's expression hardened, yet Elizabeth did not flinch. "I trusted you," she said softly, her voice carrying the weight of hurt. "And you betrayed that trust. But I am not powerless." Pierce attempted to regain control. "Elizabeth, you don't understand. I've only guided the family toward success." "Guided?" Elizabeth's tone was cutting. "You've manipulated and exploited. Success built on betrayal isn't success. It's theft." She left the room with her head held high, determination blazing in her eyes. Each deceit uncovered strengthened her resolve. This betrayal would not define her. It would catalyze her future. At a family dinner, tension was at its peak. The room felt suffocating. Every chair, every table corner, every flicker of candlelight seemed charged with expectation. Elizabeth addressed the gathering with unwavering authority. "This ends tonight. No more secrets, no more lies. What has been hidden will now be revealed. Accountability will be demanded." David tried to retort, but her gaze silenced him. Pierce remained quiet, calculating, realizing the control he thought he had was slipping. The emotional weight was heavy, but Elizabeth had found clarity. She was no longer a passive observer in her life. Each lie, each betrayal had fueled her strategy, a strategy that would reclaim her family, her business, and her peace of mind. Night after night, Elizabeth meticulously reviewed documents, analyzed every detail, and planned her next moves. Confrontation alone was insufficient. She needed proof, allies, and precision. Sophia watched her mother, both inspired and concerned. "Mom, how do you stay so strong?" Elizabeth brushed a strand of hair from her daughter's face. "Strength isn't about never feeling pain. It's about facing it, understanding it, and rising above it. That's what we will do, Sophia. Together." In the following weeks, loyal employees were informed selectively, evidence was discreetly collected, and legal advisors were consulted. Elizabeth moved with precision, aware that any misstep could give David or Pierce the advantage. Through this storm, Elizabeth's character shone brighter than ever. Her intelligence, resilience, and unwavering moral compass became a beacon for Sophia and everyone witnessing her journey. Betrayal had tested her, but it did not break her. By the end of this chapter, Elizabeth had mapped the battlefield clearly. The enemy was no longer faceless. It was her own son and trusted advisor. Yet she felt no fear, only purpose. The conflict had escalated, the betrayal was laid bare, and the stage was set for the next act: struggle, transformation, and ultimate triumph. Elizabeth's world had been shaken to its very core. The betrayal by her own son and the trusted advisor had left scars deeper than she ever imagined. Yet, amid the chaos, she knew she had a choice: succumb to despair or rise stronger than ever. The pain, the disappointment, and the heartbreak were real. But so was her determination to reclaim not only her life, but her dignity, her business, and her role as a mother. Sitting in her study late one night, Elizabeth stared at the documents spread before her. Each piece of evidence of deceit was a wound, but also a roadmap. Her mind raced with strategies, contingency plans, and possible outcomes. It was clear she could not act recklessly. Every step had to be calculated. She started with emotional healing. Understanding her trauma, she sought therapy and confided in trusted friends who had remained loyal. It wasn't weakness. It was preparation. She needed clarity of mind before she could act. Long hours of reflection, journaling, and meditation became her armor. The nights were long, filled with painful memories, but each tear shed was a step toward empowerment. Elizabeth turned her attention to financial restructuring. She conducted a complete audit of the family business, identifying every irregularity, every unauthorized transaction, and every manipulated account. This wasn't just about numbers, it was about reclaiming control. As she uncovered the scale of deceit, she didn't allow fear to take hold. Instead, each discovery fueled her resolve. She realized the strength of preparation. She was no longer reacting. She was orchestrating. Legal counsel became her next priority. Elizabeth reached out to top attorneys who specialized in corporate fraud and family disputes. She explained the intricate manipulations, the altered contracts, and the breaches of trust. Together, they built a framework to safeguard assets, pursue accountability, and prevent any future attempts to undermine her authority. It was a careful, methodical approach. Elizabeth understood that justice required patience, precision, and vigilance. At home, she turned her focus to Sophia. Her daughter had been caught in the crossfire, witnessing betrayal and manipulation firsthand. Elizabeth began mentoring Sophia, guiding her to rebuild confidence and assert independence. They spent hours discussing leadership, ethics, and emotional resilience. Elizabeth shared her own vulnerabilities, teaching Sophia that strength wasn't about perfection, but about perseverance in the face of adversity. "Mom," Sophia said one evening, "I feel like I don't know who to trust anymore. How do you stay so calm, so focused?" Elizabeth smiled softly. "It's not about being calm all the time. It's about understanding what matters most and never letting anyone steal your inner power. Trust yourself, Sophia. Your heart knows the truth, even when the world tries to confuse you." Simultaneously, Elizabeth began strategizing against Pierce and David. She analyzed Pierce's influence over David, his weaknesses, and his overconfidence. She knew he underestimated her intelligence and resolve. Elizabeth formulated subtle countermeasures, controlled exposure, strategic meetings, and discreet warnings to key employees. Every move was calculated, every interaction purposeful. She was no longer a victim, she was a force to be reckoned with. Amid this transformation, Elizabeth expanded her social influence. She realized her story could empower others, especially women facing personal and professional challenges. She launched workshops and mentoring sessions, focusing on resilience, leadership, and empowerment. Her office became a hub of energy, where women shared experiences, tears, and victories. Elizabeth taught them that betrayal, hardship, and failure were not endpoints. They were catalysts for growth. Her personal life also began to mend. She reconnected with old friends who had drifted away, repaired bridges with those who sought forgiveness, and established boundaries with those who had proven unreliable. Elizabeth learned to navigate relationships with clarity and discernment. She discovered that true transformation required not just reclaiming external power, but also cultivating inner strength and emotional intelligence. Work at the family business intensified. Elizabeth implemented systems to prevent future betrayal, including rigorous approval protocols, transparency measures, and employee accountability frameworks. She became a role model within her organization, her courage and clarity inspiring loyalty and dedication among her team. Employees who had once been uncertain began to see her as a beacon of integrity, someone who could lead them through turbulent times. Elizabeth also focused on community impact. She organized charity events, leadership seminars, and mentorship programs for young women in the city. These initiatives were more than just public acts, they were personal triumphs. Every life she touched, every lesson she shared, became a part of her legacy, a testament to her resilience. At home, she and Sophia developed a daily routine of reflection and learning. Each evening, they would discuss challenges, victories, and lessons from the day. Sophia's confidence grew exponentially. She became assertive, thoughtful, and compassionate. Elizabeth felt a profound sense of pride. Her daughter was learning to navigate the complexities of life with wisdom and courage. Elizabeth's transformation wasn't just strategic, it was deeply emotional. She learned to balance strength with compassion, assertiveness with empathy, and independence with connection. She journaled her experiences meticulously, analyzing her emotions, decisions, and outcomes. Each reflection reinforced her growth, highlighting how far she had come from the initial shock of betrayal. Her confrontations with David and Pierce became more calculated. Elizabeth had discovered that direct aggression was ineffective. Instead, she adopted a blend of psychological insight, strategic foresight, and controlled confrontation. Every conversation was carefully planned. She anticipated their responses, countered manipulations with facts, and maintained a calm, authoritative demeanor. One evening, Elizabeth invited David to the study. The room was dimly lit, the ambiance intentional, a setting designed to encourage clarity and focus. "David," Elizabeth began, her voice steady, "I want you to understand the consequences of your actions. Not because I am angry, but because I refuse to let deceit define this family." David's posture stiffened, defensive, yet Elizabeth continued. "We are rebuilding trust, accountability, and integrity. I want you to participate, but honesty is the only way forward." For the first time, David seemed uncertain. The carefully constructed mask of arrogance faltered. He left the room in silence, leaving Elizabeth with a sense of cautious optimism. Change was possible, but it required patience, strategy, and unwavering resolve. Meanwhile, Pierce realized that Elizabeth's transformation had rendered him powerless. Her meticulous planning, combined with emotional clarity, made it impossible for him to manipulate the family or business any longer. Every tactic he attempted was anticipated and countered. Elizabeth's empowerment was not just reactive, it was proactive, unstoppable, and inspiring. The months that followed were a period of consolidation and growth. Elizabeth strengthened her business, reinforced her personal relationships, and nurtured Sophia's development. Her influence expanded beyond the household and office. She became a respected voice in the community, known for resilience, wisdom, and unwavering moral courage. Elizabeth's journey of struggle and transformation demonstrated a universal truth. Betrayal and hardship are not the end of the story. They are opportunities to rise, rebuild, and inspire. She had transformed pain into power, fear into courage, and uncertainty into strategic mastery. By the end of this chapter, Elizabeth had become more than a mother or business leader. She had become a symbol of resilience and empowerment, a woman who had faced unimaginable betrayal and emerged stronger, wiser, and more compassionate. Her life was no longer defined by deceit or fear. It was a testament to the power of determination, clarity, and unwavering integrity. The day of reckoning arrived like the quiet before a storm. The Parker mansion, usually a place of warmth and bustling activity, was eerily silent. Elizabeth had orchestrated every detail meticulously. This confrontation would not be impulsive. It would be precise, decisive, and unforgettable. Sunlight streamed through the grand windows of the family conference room, reflecting off the polished mahogany table. Elizabeth stood at the head, documents neatly stacked, her expression calm but commanding. David, her eldest, sat across with forced confidence, his fingers drumming nervously. Pierce leaned back in his chair, attempting an air of control, but subtle cracks betrayed his anxiety. "Today," Elizabeth began, her voice steady and resonant, "we address the truth. No more manipulation, no more lies, no more betrayal. Everything hidden will now be exposed, and accountability will be demanded." David's lips twitched, a mix of surprise and defensiveness. Pierce's eyes narrowed, scanning Elizabeth for weakness, but found none. Elizabeth placed a folder on the table and slid it toward David. "These are the financial statements, the altered contracts, and records of secret meetings. Every irregularity has been documented." David glanced at it, feigning nonchalance. "Mom, you're making a big deal out of minor mistakes. You're overreacting." Elizabeth's gaze sharpened. "Minor mistakes? Let me remind you, David, that minor mistakes cost this family millions and jeopardized everything I have built. And Pierce?" She turned to the advisor, her tone unflinching. "You've manipulated my son, altered records, and betrayed my trust. That ends today." Pierce's jaw tightened. "Elizabeth, you misunderstand. Everything I've done was for the family's benefit." "Benefit built on deceit is not benefit. It's theft," Elizabeth replied coldly, "and I will no longer allow it." The room held a tense silence. Every employee and family member present felt the weight of the moment. Elizabeth continued, her voice unwavering. "I have documented every action, verified every transaction, and consulted with legal experts. You have no room to deny your actions. Today, truth prevails." David's mask finally cracked. "Mom, you can't do this. You're turning the family against me." Elizabeth leaned forward, her eyes piercing. "I am not turning anyone against you. You've done that yourself. Lies, manipulation, and betrayal do not build loyalty. They destroy it. And now, we rebuild on truth and accountability." Pierce attempted to interject, but Elizabeth raised a hand, silencing him. "No more excuses. Your time to manipulate and deceive is over." At that moment, Elizabeth's legal counsel stepped forward, presenting formal documentation. The evidence was irrefutable: altered contracts, unauthorized withdrawals, and a detailed trail of deceit linking both David and Pierce. Employees exchanged knowing glances, realizing for the first time the full extent of the betrayal. David's face turned pale. Pierce's composure wavered. For years, they had underestimated Elizabeth's intelligence and resolve. Now, confronted with the undeniable truth, their confidence crumbled. Elizabeth's voice softened slightly, but it carried an unmistakable authority. "This confrontation is not about punishment. It's about justice, responsibility, and reclaiming what rightfully belongs to our family and this business. You have choices. You can own your mistakes, or you can continue down a path of denial and deceit. The choice is yours. David hesitated, then looked at Pierce, seeking reassurance. Pierce's lips pressed into a thin line, no words coming to his aid. Finally, David muttered, I didn't realize. Elizabeth held up a hand. Realization is not enough, David. Action is required. Accountability is non-negotiable. The room's tension peaked, the air thick with anticipation. Elizabeth's strategy was working. Her calm authority and meticulous preparation left no room for escape. She had turned the tables completely. Turning to Sophia, who had been observing silently, Elizabeth said, Sophia, truth and integrity guide us, even when those closest to us falter. Remember this. Sophia nodded, tears glistening in her eyes. She had witnessed her mother's transformation, her unwavering courage, and now, the final act of reclamation. It was a lesson she would carry for life. Elizabeth then took a deep breath and outlined the consequences and corrective measures. David Pierce, restitution will be made. The contracts you altered will be corrected. Any financial discrepancies will be resolved legally. And moving forward, transparency will be mandatory in all family and business matters. This is non-negotiable. Pierce, finally recognizing he could not manipulate the situation, tried a last-ditch argument. Elizabeth, this is extreme. You're ruining relationships. Elizabeth's eyes were steady, unwavering. No, Pierce. You and David ruined the trust. I am restoring it. I am restoring this family, this business, and our legacy. That is not extreme. It is necessary. For the first time, David's defenses collapsed entirely. He slumped in his chair, shame and remorse washing over him. Mom, I'm sorry. I don't know what came over me. Elizabeth's voice softened slightly, infused with maternal authority. Acknowledgement is the first step. Now, you must act with honesty, integrity, and accountability. The choices you make from here define your character, not the mistakes you have made. Pierce, realizing there was no escape, finally admitted his role as well. I misused my position. I allowed ambition to cloud my judgment. I am sorry, Elizabeth. Elizabeth nodded. Her strategic confrontation had worked. The truth had been laid bare, the manipulations exposed, and accountability demanded. The employees, previously uncertain and tense, now watched Elizabeth with renewed respect and admiration. They witnessed the triumph of integrity, intelligence, and courage over deception and betrayal. Elizabeth had not only reclaimed control, but had inspired those around her to uphold the same values. Later that evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Elizabeth and Sophia stood on the balcony overlooking the city. The air was crisp, the skyline glowing with the soft hues of dusk. Mom, did we really win? Sophia asked quietly. Elizabeth smiled, a mixture of relief, pride, and quiet strength in her eyes. We didn't just win, Sophia. We rose above, we faced betrayal, we confronted it, and we reclaimed what was ours. That is victory. In the days that followed, the atmosphere in the Parker household shifted dramatically. Trust was being rebuilt slowly but sincerely. David and Pierce, humbled and aware of the consequences of their actions, worked to repair relationships and uphold integrity. Elizabeth's leadership had transformed fear and uncertainty into clarity and purpose. The climax was not just about confrontation, it was a turning point of transformation. Elizabeth had faced the greatest challenge of her life, and she emerged not only victorious, but profoundly empowered. The family had been shaken to its core, but from the ruins of betrayal, a stronger, wiser, and more united foundation was being built. Elizabeth's heart swelled with pride and cautious hope. Every strategy, Every late-night planning session and every moment of self-reflection had led to this moment. The power of resilience, intelligence, and unwavering moral courage had triumphed over deceit and manipulation. As the night deepened, Elizabeth made a silent promise to herself. She would continue to lead with integrity, mentor others, and ensure that betrayal could never again disrupt the harmony she had fought so hard to restore. The turning point was complete. The battles had been fought, the lies exposed, and the foundation laid for renewal, reconciliation, and growth. Elizabeth's journey had reached a critical juncture, one where courage, clarity, and relentless determination had reshaped destiny itself. The mansion, once tense and shadowed with betrayal, now breathed a quiet serenity. Sunlight filtered through tall windows, casting warm patterns on polished floors. Elizabeth stood on the balcony, the city sprawling beneath her, a testament to endless possibilities. The weight of deception had lifted. She could finally breathe, reflect, and embrace the life she had reclaimed. Sophia approached, slipping her hand into her mother's. "Mom, it feels peaceful here," she whispered, eyes glistening. Elizabeth smiled, a mixture of relief, pride, and quiet strength. "It's more than peace, Sophia. It's understanding. We've faced darkness, confronted lies, and come out stronger. We've learned what truly matters: resilience, integrity, and the power of love." Inside, the mansion was alive with renewed energy. Employees worked harmoniously, inspired by Elizabeth's unwavering courage. Even estranged relatives approached with sincerity, seeking reconciliation. Elizabeth realized forgiveness was not forgetting. It was reclaiming her power, choosing how to move forward, and creating a life on her own terms. Her vision now extended beyond personal triumph. Elizabeth launched mentorship programs for women navigating challenges, teaching leadership, confidence, and resilience. Sophia joined, learning not just business acumen but empathy and moral courage. Together, they shared their story at schools, workshops, and online platforms, showing that rising above betrayal could inspire change far beyond one family. Evenings were spent in quiet reflection. Elizabeth journaled, revisiting the journey from betrayal to empowerment. She understood that the wounds had shaped her, but they no longer defined her. Each obstacle had been a lesson in courage, patience, and strategy. David and Pierce, humbled and repentant, were working to restore trust, acknowledging that their deceit had consequences. Elizabeth guided them with measured authority, teaching accountability without cruelty. She had mastered the balance between strength and compassion, independence and connection. On the balcony, Sophia leaned against her mother. "Mom, what comes next for us?" Elizabeth looked at the horizon, the fading sun painting the skyline in gold and crimson. "We live fully, Sophia, bravely, honestly, and we guide others to do the same." Her story had evolved from personal pain to a narrative of empowerment, hope, and legacy. The once dark chapters of betrayal now served as a foundation for growth. Elizabeth had transformed not only her own life, but also the lives of those around her, leaving a blueprint for resilience, courage, and integrity. Turning to the audience, her voice steady and inspiring, Elizabeth spoke. "If this story moved you, remember, strength isn't merely surviving. It's rising, learning, and helping others along the way. Like, share, and subscribe to our channel for more tales of courage, empowerment, and triumph over betrayal. Your support allows us to continue spreading hope and guidance to those facing life's toughest challenges." The camera lingered on Elizabeth and Sophia, framed against the glowing city skyline. Their silhouettes radiated resilience, love, and an unbreakable bond. A gentle wind rustled, carrying with it the promise of new beginnings. Elizabeth took a deep breath, a serene smile on her face. "We've reclaimed our story," she said softly. "And now, we help others reclaim theirs." The scene faded gradually, leaving the audience with a sense of closure, hope, and the enduring power of family, courage, and redemption.